Hi there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Here today in Western Australia, which is where I live, it is very early in the morning. I've got up early to try and push through some of these videos. Now, for those that haven't joined before, my name's Anna Pirelli. I'm the business owner. I've done a couple of numerology videos there to introduce people to the concepts of numerology. And just a big reminder before I crack into the content, you don't need to be psychic or even an energy worker to do numerology and to do it well and successfully. You just need to understand the numbers. What else can I put in? This is the third video in the series, and I will be devoting a separate video to each of the ruling numbers and, in fact, each of the different approaches to numerology, because if you've watched those other ones, you'll understand there's far more to the life path mapping than just the ruling number. The ruling number is one part of it. So, as previously discussed in the other videos, a person's ruling number provides some generalist information about their personality and the challenges that they will experience as they walk their life path. But the thing is, numerology breaks all the numbers down. So, we've calculated that. I'm just wondering if I'll talk it through rather than map it. If you've watched the other videos, you'll know how to do it. You add up the numbers of your birth, which if you're born on the 13th of July, it would be 1 plus 3 for the 13. The July is a 7. So that's 7 plus 3 plus 1 is 11. And then it's the date that you were born, the year that you were born. So if you were born in 1980, it would be 1 plus 9 plus 8. So 8 and 9, so that's 18 plus the 11 is a 29. You would be born on a 29, what is considered a 29/11. That's how you calculate your numbers. So just adding that little bit of information there. But basically, anyone whose the individual digits of the birth number adds up to a 10, this is reduced down in most instances with numerology, not the ruling number though, down to a 1. Now, the reason why ruling numbers do not break down to a 1, they're always calculated or given the meaning of the 10. So I'm not sure that I explained that clearly, but I hope you got it. If you haven't, if you've got a question, put it down the bottom. Otherwise, go and watch the other videos. So in regard to the 10 and what I was trying to explain before, maybe this slide will explain it a little clearer, which is you add up the digits of the birth number, your day of month and year that you were born, and if it comes to a number 10, these are all the variations that you can get. You know, if somebody's numbers add up to 10, well, then they're a clear 10. If it's a 19, it's reduced down to a 10. If it's a 28, it's reduced to a 10. These are the different ways of looking at it. So it's very diverse to be able to reach a ruling number. And the number 10 is actually very diverse. As far as numbers go, it has a huge range and personality and expression, which can be which ranges from people being the most likable of people that you could ever find, very charismatic, or to people that are basically just lost and floundering souls. Now, that could be said for any of the numerology combinations, but I guess with a 10, it's such a powerful combination of the ego with the spiritual expression that it's far more overt and obvious with a ruling 10. So the people that are born with a ruling 10, they'll naturally be able to access their psychic or intuitive gifts much easier than those people who are born with the other ruling numbers, because there is an inclusion of the 0 in the birth chart. I was going to hold this over for another video, but I might put it in here. The more noughts in the birth chart, the easier it is for that person to access their psychic gifts. There is actually a caution, though, that people should be aware of, and I find it very interesting, and I think time will reveal itself through the 21st century, where we've got all these people that have born, like, can you imagine somebody born on the 10th of the 10th in the year 2000? They will have 5 zeros. I mean, they are just about walking around conscious, potentially. Now, I say potential because I've already worked out, actually, I might do a video on the zeros, that just because the potential is there doesn't mean that people are doing it. If anything, I think the 0 for the 21st century is manifesting as really heightened sensitivity and even judgment attached to it. But anyway, for the 10, they have a great potential for great achievements if they access these superior gifts of adaptation and versatility, which are inherent traits for them. So, the general attributes of the ruling 10, this is for all of those that we saw on the previous slide, they will all to some extent carry these attributes, right? They are adaptable, successful when living positively, they thrive in a busy and exciting environment, they would enjoy living in the centre of the city as opposed to living in a remote area in the bush. They're happy, generally well liked and very popular because they're charismatic. They have tendencies to walk their talk. Other attributes that other people would see about them, or what people might say about them, is that they appear to be fearless. They love their freedom and they're very sociable. They have a lot of confidence and seem very self assured, regardless of the clothes that they're wearing. They're the sort of person that could walk down the shops in sloppy joes, look good, and convey that air of comfort. Oh, I'm not sure how to explain it. Hopefully that did it. Anyway, they also prefer the company, as a rule, of their own sex to the opposite sex. And by that, I don't mean that you will find them in same sex marriages or anything like that at any greater rate than any other group of people. What I mean is that they will thrive in social environments with people of their own sex, and that could be, if we're talking women, that might be the women's footy club or whatever sporting event they get into. They probably would prefer to be in the sport of their own sex as opposed to mixed sex. But having said that, they will still enjoy, when I think about it, they will still enjoy having, what do they call, men's and women's football or something like that. Not necessarily football, but you get the drift. Um, those tens who have a heightened sense of self or awareness, they will have that inherent capacity to rise above all problems, no matter how insurmountable they appear. Now, the other thing that's important to know about a 10 is that while they are invariably happy, they actually generally don't understand why other people aren't happy, because they tend to be positive people. They can't understand people that can be consumed by doubt and fear. So they are advised basically to develop their empathy and compassion. When they're younger, you'll often find them involved with these superficial pleasures, particularly sports, or if they're not physically involved in the sports, they'll be perhaps in the cheer squad or sitting there coaching people on or whatever as an observer, because obviously they love these kind of group activities as well. They get a sense of value from this social connection. Because they have this confidence about them, it can actually be quite overwhelming to other people, and whether the 10 intends to or not, sometimes they can be perceived as dominating. It's actually usually not intended, it just is a side effect of their confidence and that that air that they carry. It's just a byproduct of it. So it's helpful if the 10 is aware and tries to moderate that, out of consideration for the people around them, because attempting or being perceived as dominating really is not a good thing. It actually goes contrary to everything that the 10 is trying to do. Now, the other thing is too that the 10s generally are artistic, they're very tactile and sensitive, and this can lend themselves to being good musicians. And because they're tactile people, they can appreciate the fine quality of clothing and fabric, so you can find them in those types of professions. There is a caution with the 10, which is that should they end up, well, should they look, it's very unlikely that they would do it because of this reason. I don't really see a 10 turning around and saying, okay, I'll take that rental property or that social experiment, living on a mountain on my own for 12 months or whatever, because they are such social people that if they are become socially isolated, they can start to feel very, very despondent and get depression. So key take home messages for this is social inclusion is important, and that the 10 must develop empathy and compassion because it doesn't necessarily come naturally to them. So, our numerology points us to the life purpose, as said before, and I think probably over and over again throughout my videos. They point us to a life purpose to gain meaning in our life and also for our humanitarian cause, because that's all tied together. We're not islands. We come to the earth plane and we're here all for one, one for all. We're here to support each other. The thing with the 10 is that they have a leadership role, and their role involves learning, if they don't already manage it, learning to adapt, flexibility, because as they learn it, they have capacity to teach it to other people. And we live in a world of uncertainty, shall we say. So, their life purpose, I'm going to reiterate this, is to learn to adapt to changing circumstances and to remain flexible with graciousness, because as they develop these skills themselves, because they have the gift of the gab and they're good teachers, they are going to be able to help other people to change their circumstances and live with uncertainty. They will be leading by example. So, the advice for a ruling 10, and just a reminder, we're speaking here generally about the number 10s. This is for all people, numerology combinations. I'll go into the individual pathways shortly, but for now, the best advice to anybody with a ruling 10 is that they should develop their personal awareness and establish what their leadership strengths are so that they can make the right career choices for themselves. Now, this is particularly important for the ruling 10 because of their tendencies to be a leader. You find them in these leadership situations all the time. It could be a work leader, it might even be humanitarian. So it's really important to understand any overwhelming feelings of unhappiness. Now, they would be encouraged to seek or place their attention on activities of spiritual substance, and to develop self-discipline, because if they don't develop their self-discipline, it will end up impacting negatively. They'll lose their confidence and they'll experience a lowered self-esteem, and that will undermine their whole approach to their life path. So it's very, very important that they learn to meditate and ground and center on a regular basis to make sure that that internal balance and harmony remains there. And by doing so, they will experience a greater level of harmony across all factors of their life. Sorry, I need a cough. So, where was I? I was thinking, yes, if they don't do this meditation, they're going to experience a lowered self esteem. So, they need to be meditating, they need to ground and center. And in fact, if you look at my other videos, personal hygiene, we all need to be doing it. But they have an important role on the earth plane, so they probably need to spend more time in it. And besides which, not only will it help them to maintain the balance for their leadership qualities, it will also have crossover benefits to their family and work life. And it supports the development, because let's be real, any leaders of quality and merit, they need to have some really good internal strength and self-discipline. So the advice is that they should try to find constructive and creative outlets as part of expanding their mind and their perspective and the way they view the world, because in this way they'll be able to develop more positive attitudes. They'll certainly be able to develop their compassion and a greater love of life, and they will be able to discern what is important, what's worthwhile, and what isn't. That is the case of when to hold on, when to let go, and depending on the level of their personal development, they can actually overcome a lot of the limitations of the birth number, because the 10, like anybody, does have some limitations. So when we say they need to develop compassion, for example, because they don't understand unhappy people, once again, that's a general comment. But if they develop themselves personally, they can learn the art of compassion, and that becomes a case of overcoming the limitations. The same with empathy, that, instead of judging people, seek understanding in all things. Let go of right, wrong, and just seek to understand why people do what they do. And the 10 can actually do this. I have complete faith the 10 can do this and do it well. So we tentatively touched on this before, so I'm just going to reiterate this again and expand a little more. The advice for a ruling 10 is that they develop their personal awareness and that they identify their leadership strengths so that they make the right career choices for themselves, right? So an example of why this is so important, especially for a 10, is because they have this barrier to understanding feelings of unhappiness in others until they've done enough self development. So it would be fair to say that this lack of connection there is going to make them very unsuitable as counsellors or therapists or whatever. They might work really well if they've got a human. So let's actually say the ruling 10 is passionate perhaps about women and children that have fled violence or whatever. They are not necessarily the people that you would put at the front line if you're talking about their humanitarian cause. You would put them as the CEO, perhaps, because they have that leadership ability, or you might put them as a team leader, but you wouldn't make them the front line of approach for people that need to express and release their suffering, if you like, because that's not the best career move for a person that is a ruling 10, not until they're well developed anyway. What else? If they make the wrong career move, there is a risk that they will repress their inherent personality traits. So, this is a difference between awareness and bypassing limitation, right? An aware 10 will know, okay, I'm not suited to be a counselor, so I am aware that I lack empathy and I generally walk around with 2 feet in my mouth. So they would try and be quiet in certain situations because they know I might offend and upset people. Well, that becomes actually quite harmful to themselves and it disrupts their own internal peace and harmony. So it's a case of pick the right job so that they self-care, that they're not denying aspects of themselves, they're still working towards their peak, and they're not doing any harm to other people. There's a clear message here for ruling 10s that they should avoid procrastinating because it breeds laziness. So don't put off until tomorrow what you can do today. And as I said before, focus on the spiritual as opposed to the superficial. So interestingly, when we talk about suitable vocations for the ruling 10, there seems to be a common theme that I've been able to find where they're either in the entertainment field or they're politicians. It is, in my literature that I've done my research on there, it does say that they are good at interior decoration and design because of this tactile element to them. I can't say that I've observed that, but I can see why that might be the case because I don't access everybody's birth numbers, but they certainly do have an artistic flair. So I can imagine they would be good with fabrics and design. However, they tend to be better suited towards fundraising ventures or even politics. And we're going to look at this now. So just a reminder, where a birth number of 10 ends up being the actual 10, it's not broken down to a 1, it remains being read as a 10. There is no ruling number 1. What do I need to say about this? The ancients believed that the number 10 was a perfect number and it was symbolic of the continuation of life, such as the wheel of life, which is in the tarot. It's that everything in life must change because progress can only occur through change. And life is an ongoing cycle of change and development. People that are born with a ruling 10-1 specifically have a real role with helping people to adjust on Earth and to face some of the increasing complex and uncertain issues that society is facing. The reality is that people have always historically struggled to make adjustments with change, and living with uncertainty is never comfortable. So, for the best part, people and humanity they've always needed to be supported around change, I guess. Anyway, what this means for the people that are born under the 10-1 is that they have an earthly responsibility to help other members of society to manage the changes in their lives and to retain a peace and harmony and a hope for the future, I guess, positive outcomes. And this means bringing people together in peaceful ways and creating a sense of unity. So those people with a 10-1 who manage to do this are often associated with great achievements and success. And this includes financial success and the realization of their own dreams and goals. Don't forget, this is a life pathway number. Okay, so I can say this now, but when we're talking about a life pathway, we're not talking about, oh, when I turned 18. We're talking across the life path. I mean, people may have some of this success in the early adulthood, but it is a life path. It's called that for a reason. Challenges for the 10-1 can include identifying how they're going to achieve their humanitarian purpose of uniting people, at least until they learn the art of living with silence and using meditation as part of their method of gaining access to the spiritual vision. The key also for a 10-1 is to align themselves with their higher consciousness and to believe in themselves. And another really key factor for the 10-1 is they must overcome any sense of superiority and egotism, which this will only create a sense of separation between themselves. So how would you define that? Okay, if they think they're superior, they may become a little self-absorbed, and that will actually be contrary to their life path. And they must learn, the 10-1 must learn to lead by example and not just become a fallback leader because, hey, there's nobody else available, we'll get this person to do it. So one of the key factors with this is be a leader. If this is you, if you've got a 10-1, be a leader. Don't be a pretender, be a leader. Now, fascinatingly, as far as I'm concerned, I was doing some research through this. I didn't do a lot, but basically just to try and find people that we can use as examples of a particular ruling number. Now, Angelina Jordan, take a look at her birth number. She actually is a ruling 10-1. Now, if you haven't heard of her, she is a young girl who has won a couple of singing competitions like The Voice and Got Talent and things like that. You can find a heap of her videos on YouTube. There's a lot of people doing reactions to her, but she has her own channel. Now, this little lass, I think she first started singing competitions when she was 6 or 7 years old. And the nature of the songs that she could sing and put emotion into was actually breathtaking. It was mind-blowing to think that a little girl could do this. Now, the thing is, not only has she got 3 noughts in her number, she is a ruling 10-1. So she has capacity through her ability to express musically to unite people. People will gather together peacefully to listen to her because there is a suggestion. Lots of people say that she's got the voice of an angel, and she can bring, if you read the feedback and the reviews on YouTube, she brings people to tears with her music. I actually do question on a superficial level if she's channeling. I know that she's been exposed to music from a very young age and that she's had the influence of creative family members, but I think that she's so wide open that she's gifted. I'm not going to do a reading on her, but anyway, have a look at what she does. So the 1910 reflects the power of the sun, and these people tend to be upbeat, very vibrant, enormous amount of vitality and strength, and they tend to have a really positive attitude. They're very good at organising, and they have a responsible approach to life. And basically, those people born on this number are endowed with physical strength and determination, and we're talking about willpower here. They have an inner knowledge of what they need to be doing as part of their life pathway, and they have a tremendous amount of resilience and can basically bounce back from all sorts of setbacks. And they will often achieve positions of authority or leadership in the workplace because they are so decisive and energetic, and because they will pursue a goal to its completed stage, especially if it's a worthwhile goal or one that they value and they consider to be worthwhile. To their credit, though, they do recognise that the completion of any goal is a consequence of collaboration and team effort. They're very astute and can process information quite rapidly, which makes them very good, obviously, at problem solving. And it's this power of processing that attracts people to whatever cause or project they're working on, because they've got this magnetic quality, and that's the rapid thought processing, if you like. In a way, their gifts or their gifts of words and language are basically their real draw card, because if they didn't have that capacity to turn around and outline to another person what they are trying to achieve. So, they're in some ways the visionary. I see a visionary, this is what I think should be happening. And then they can explain it to other people, and other people see the same vision and they can hold that vision. So that then encourages them to join with whatever project that person is setting about. So while the tarot card of the sun is associated with the number 1910, and this obviously is not the tarot card, this is my AI images. In many ways, it's actually quite good about the 1910, because it reflects a person that's coming, trotting in on their white charger, all full of positive and sunshine and all the rest of it, going to people that are impacted negatively and persuading them how and why things should change and how it can be done better and how it can have better outcomes for people. And this is basically what a 1910 does. So what else? Oh yeah, they give the information. They will not just give one potential solution. They might give a couple of solutions. They might go, okay, you know what? This is your problem. Here's the problem as I see it. Do you agree? Okay, well, here are your choices. You can do X, Y, and Z. What are your choices are? Now, because they have this humanitarian attitude, it's kind of like they're not going to dictate to the people, this is what I think you should do. We're going to do this. What they say is, this is what I think we should do. Notice the change of the words. This is what we should do. And I'm thinking we could do X, Y, and Z. What do you think? And then the people come back and they go, well, I think we should do Y. Right? Go, okay. And he's the man to lead, or woman to lead it through to its fruition. Now, interestingly, Mikhail Gorbachev was a 19/10. Now, I mean, obviously, this is a long time ago. We're into a whole new generation and decade and all the rest of it. But he's credited with major structural change in the USSR, what was then the USSR. And if you think about it, if you go and do your history, what was it? We had the wall and that kind of stuff. There was the Iron Curtain. And when he came in, he made some really big changes. He, through the power of persuasion and his use of words, shall we say, he set himself aside from previous presidents, and allegedly, obviously I'm not Russian, I had to look through the Wikipedia or whatever, and what made him different was because he took the time to speak to average citizens when he was walking down the street. He would pass the time of day with them and have a chat. He used his power of word as a tool of persuasion and for making people feel better about themselves, and therefore he won the support of the people. He also was able to persuade the old guard, the people that maintained the structure, shall we say, of the Iron Curtain. He was able to persuade them and encourage them to go into retirement. I'm not sure how he did that, but he did, obviously, according to this, using his words. And then once he'd got the, if you like, the housekeeping done within what we now know as Russia, then he set about trying to create and build better relationships with the world outside Russia, and he commenced negotiations with the US and China. Now, while Russia still has problems, as do all the countries everywhere, he is credited with a leadership style that included freedom of speech and freedom of press, and his idea was to empower citizens to be included in the decisions about economic restructuring. I don't have a bent, by the way, towards communists or whatever. You'll see in the next slides. I actually was just trying to find people with birth numbers that were stand out and trying to reduce the calculations down as an example of how a person would use these inherent gifts. And this is just what I've come up with today, okay? Now, it's worth remembering too, before we move on to the next combination, that under the 1910, there is a vibration or energy attached to these numbers of debt collection. We're talking karma here. So while these people are generally sunny and optimistic, they will, without doubt, at some point in their life, experience great tests and be tested so severely in ways that others would not necessarily be tested. That doesn't mean, by the way, that they can't surmount them, because they will surmount them in different ways. But they're going to, it's kind of like almost a crisis of faith. They've got to dig really deep to hold on to that optimism and faith and rise above the challenges and rely on the magic, this gift of words that they've got to get them through this time. Now, as we've used Gorbachev here as an example of using the numbers to get to his position, or the power of the numbers of 1910, he certainly did go through a challenge. He had to fight off a coup, and he actually lost to it. Did I say coup like a chicken coop? I meant a coup, as in a political coup. That happened, and he ended up resigning. Well, they kind of won. He got the support of Yeltsin, apparently. And anyway, go and do a Google on it if you're interested, because I'm trying to focus on the numbers and I can go down a rabbit warren. Either way, yes, he did get his challenges, and after he left the party, or his role as leader of Russia, he then had to find a new purpose and meaning for his life, which he did. And he apparently directed his energy towards navigating global peace, particularly in the areas of Palestine and Israel. He was a peace, what would you call it? I can't think. Warrior for peace, I guess. So, yeah, where I'm going with this is, yes, very challenging, but also great blessings. And as life is cyclical, there is up and down, and they generally have some really extreme highs as well as the tests. So, people born under the combination of the 2810, they're particularly determined, decisive, and energetic in pursuing their goals. And the beauty is that they are actually quite progressive, and they like to see people advance, and that includes obviously themselves. And they have the perseverance, the internal fortitude, if you like, that's necessary to accomplish almost anything that they set their mind to. They have a creative element or aspect about them, and they have the inspirational energy that's associated with this vibration. So they will tend to progress through their life and continue to evolve and learn from their experiences, and developing their wisdom through this ongoing capacity to adjust to changing circumstances, because they've got the lesson of flexibility as part of their pathway. Now, this is actually good because these people are particularly ambitious, and when they're living upright, they possess really good judgment, and they won't often be taken advantage of, certainly in a material way. They can usually remain unaffected by the negative opinions of others. It's like, well, what you say doesn't matter to me, because they have a sense of faith in themselves and their own abilities. Now, they tend to be associated with the Two of Wands, which is a business card. Once again, this card, or the image that I've got, doesn't do justice to it. It should actually, in an ideal world, have two of the staves or rods there, because this particular businessman, he's never reliant on one business opportunity or one means to make money only. He's normally got a couple of irons in the fire, and he is prepared to wait for the ideal one. So he'll take a couple of jobs perhaps to float him while he's waiting for the dream to manifest. This is the ships coming in here. Yeah, and they're quite expansive. They can see opportunities further afield than those just under their nose. What else? He's very enterprising, and so is the 2810. What else? The guidance for the people with the 2810 is that they should learn to use their instincts and these particular business gifts for humanitarian purposes. And when they put the effort in, their power potential, because they've got so much potential, will flow into the creative and inspirational actions. They're advised to learn to use these instincts and blend the conscious with the subconscious, so that they can work through their affairs on a conscious level. Now, what that means is, hope you didn't hear the truck go past. What this means is that instinctually they will know the right decisions to make, but at the same time, if they can focus down and dig deep and get through the content on that subconscious, process it, especially if it comes to managing things that might be barriers to achieving the goal, right? So they get a hunch, I should be launching X and X business, but they need to take that time out to work through, well, what's going to go for it, what's going to go against it, and how to plan it, map it. And they can do that on a conscious level when they've tapped in to identify what risks might be there. Look, frankly, I think they can do it anyway. The master of your own destiny is a very appropriate saying for the 2810th at 10, because they do have faith in themselves, and this faith that they have in themselves can actually move mountains. However, there are a couple of cautions, as with any of the numbers. They're advised to avoid impulsive behaviour and a lack of judgment without this business without reflection, because it might result in them losing everything that they've worked for. However, even if they did lose everything that they worked for, even if they were, to put it bluntly, slow learners and failed to develop these skills of ability and foresight, and they were impulsive and reckless, they can still rebuild their lives much wiser and far more practically, because they have the internal strength, courage, willpower, and the initiative to start over, which is actually a really good attributes. Anyway, a prime example of the person who has lost everything because they were impulsive and reckless is actually Prince Andrew. And he's currently in that situation where he's yet to rebuild. He hasn't started it. And I think this is interesting because we know from the reports that are in the media, if they're true, that he did have a guru. So he hasn't necessarily ignored all of his spiritual and subconscious, but he definitely can be found to have been guilty of focusing on the superficial. Not being privy to the inner workings of his life, though, it might be that he only got his guru after this whole business of Canada and Epstein and all the rest of it. We don't have a timeline of his life, so I really can't speculate on that too much. But other famous 2810s who have really left their mark on the world is Karl Marx. My goodness me, who hasn't heard of him? I've put the dates of birth there. Esther Peterson might be somebody that people haven't heard of. She was an advocate for consumer and women's rights. She was born in, obviously, December 1906. Martin Luther King, he was another 2810, hugely humanitarian, visionary type people. And Tesla was a 2810. Each of them, so let's put this in perspective. This is such a solid number. They've left their mark on the world and in the history books in one way or another. The only other caution that I would give to a 2810, this is because I know one of them closely within my family unit, is that judgment can be a problem when they're living negatively. And this includes a very narrow mindedness with a sense of self righteousness. And once that kicks in, and this is generally related to a lack of empathy. Once they go into that narrow minded, judgmental state, it can be particularly hard to shift them out of that state of thinking, because once again, they're living negatively. They're not living with the attributes of flexibility and adaptability. They are inflexible. And I say, good luck trying to change their mind once they've become fixed on something. Life will ultimately, though, as with Prince Andrew, if they adopt those attitudes, life will ultimately give them what I like to call kick-ass universal lessons. I mean, obviously the preference is that we avoid them, but you can't avoid your life path. So the idea is, or the best advice would be, to work on developing compassion and retain an open mind, and then they will achieve their path. So the vibration of every number carries opposing qualities, positive or negative, yin yang, so to speak. And the number 3710 is associated with humanitarian leadership and very powerful leadership. And that is leading by example, demonstrating honour and integrity. There are skills of diplomacy also associated with the 3710, and this is about treating all people with respect, being courteous and civil, and combined with a natural empathy and compassion, although obviously, generally speaking, this is difficult for people that are born with a ruling 10. The 3710 has capacity to learn empathy very quickly and overcome that as a limitation. What else with them? There is a very strong consciousness that is linked to the principles of fairness and justice. And it's because of these qualities that people with a 3710 offer a certain charisma that's very attractive to other people and who will join their cause. Now, when living upright, the 3710 is dependable and they are brave. They are very brave people. They are brave enough to fight for what they believe is right, and their aim is to get fairness and equity for all parties with the completion of their goal. This particular number has a strong regard for family traditions and values, and there is a generosity of spirit attached to it. There's also that desire to fulfill their spiritual purpose in a way where they can live authentically and be true to themselves and their values. So, people with this number, they really need to ensure that they retain this authenticity of who and what they are, because there is a risk that this number sequence can become manipulative or aggressive and even self-serving as part of achieving their goal. So if your ruling number is a 3710, or if you've got a child that's a 3710, you would be encouraging them to question themselves, their motivations, why they're taking actions, why they're making the decisions that they're doing. Questions that a person could ask themselves would be along the lines of, will this benefit me? Will it harm others? Will it benefit all of us? Okay. The 3710 is not expected to create for others at the expense of themselves, but rather to take any actions in the knowledge that if there is a risk to others, then this risk can be avoided, because obviously, when living upright, they're not going to want to create harm for other people, because that'll just bring negative karma anyway. Now, as an example of famous people that are 3710, I think it's really interesting to note that, and I think you pronounce his name as Lech Wałęsa. He was in my lifetime. I have recollections of him being acknowledged on the news and the troubles in Poland. And anyway, Lech won a Nobel Peace Prize for his activities in Poland. Certainly not in my lifetime, was Napoleon Bonaparte. Now, he led the French Revolution. If you look at what happened with the French Revolution, people, I'm not sure about the younger generation anymore, because I'm not sure what they're teaching them in school, but if they haven't been taught it, the bottom line is most of modern democracy these days came out of France, because in 1798, under Bonaparte's leadership, they decided to, not in a nice way, depose a king who was completely self-serving, and they put the power in the people. And Napoleon Bonaparte led that. So we can see that initially, whilst it was violent with the change of government leadership in France, it was motivated with admirable intent, I guess, to increase the standard of living for people and citizens. Bearing in mind that these people were suffering at the time, most of them were struggling to survive. Anyway, going back to Napoleon Bonaparte, he, under this, the vibration of this number, led a great massive social change that impacted on the rest of the world. So that was a positive, but it would appear to me that problems started for him when obviously we in Australia would say he became too big for his boots or whatever. But the reality is, I think he actually became enamored with himself. He got cocky, he became what he despised, and he ended up paying the ultimate price for it. He ended up being overthrown, if you like, and then he was imprisoned, I think, for about 15 years before he ultimately died. So he had an unhappy ending. But I don't think that we can detract that the man actually did some very great actions with humanitarian substance to his decision making in the early days, and he certainly was a force to be reckoned with. So we're almost there. Thank you for staying with me so far. when we look at the 4610, we're looking at people who are very strong-willed. Determination obviously is a key factor again. They are imaginative and very enthusiastic, and determination once again is an aspect, along with the optimism and a positive nature. Now, these people are very happy, and generally they've had a happy childhood. So they are associated with fulfillment and achievement. And the traits that they show to us are basically they're idealistic and they're defenders of justice. They are both generous and compassionate when living upright. They will give almost all of themselves to somebody if they think it's going to help them. They have a naturally curious and inquisitive mind, and they're willing to investigate things. And when they are carrying out their investigations, they don't find superficial knowledge to be satisfying. It's not enough for them to ask a question, like why do birds fly, or and be told because they've got wings, for example. They'd have to go, well, that's not enough. They'd need to go and do a dig. They fly because of, and look at the physics of it. In fact, actually, I know a funny story, but I'll leave that because this video is getting too long. Anyway, they have an inherent insight or understanding of the connection between all of us and the spirit of sister and brotherhood, and that what we do to one, we do to all of us, right? I'll go into that actually in another video. They have a great inventiveness as well, because they have this natural capacity, thinking up scientific and even mechanical concepts as means of solutions. There is an awareness of, just looking at this, actually, just a sec. I had to repeat my notes, obviously, or reflect back on my notes. Obviously, I write notes with doing these things. Anyway, so where I need to go to is within this number as well, there is a level of innocence and purity with the vibration of the 4610, because of their awareness of this spirit of connectedness between all, there is no way known that they will seek to dominate other people, but at the same time, they are powerful people and they do like to lead because they have got their own mind and they know what is the right thing to do. They generally work well with a shared leadership. But it's consensual, if that makes sense. Certainly within relationships, they would be like that. They're reflected here as the Six of Cups, and that's what the Six of Cups is. They seek to emotionally support people, but they don't seek to dominate. Anyway, where we're going to this is these wonderful gifts that they have. They generally realised, I've got to remind everybody, these gifts often take a whole lifetime to establish for people, and if they've got a long life, it can take a long time. Sometimes people will step into or embrace these gifts earlier in their life than others, and that's great if they do, because obviously the earlier people step into their gifts, the better quality, shall we say, the more peaceful and harmonious their life is. But sometimes it can take a whole lifetime. Anyway, for the people with a 4610, it often can take periods of sorrow, shall we say. They have some trials there, and this is what opens the door to their gifts and their understanding of life. At the same time, these trials and sorrows, if mismanaged, this is the flip side of the 4610, it can result in them not realizing or actualizing their potential, because they may choose to escape from the sorrows by living in the past, remembering the good times and just getting lost down memory lane. Or I think in some ways I interpret this as them being more vulnerable toward health conditions such as PTSD as well. So if they do, PTSD is a real condition. If they do end up experiencing some of those symptoms, then the idea would be that they aim to recover from that and to recover their functions so that they can embrace their gifts, because their gifts are going to obviously help so many people, not just themselves. So this is about the third time I've actually tried to record this slide. Maybe third time lucky. So I'm going to get straight into it and just hopefully be direct. Right, the number 5510, for people who are born with this number combination, they tend to have business and work leadership roles, and this is because they're perceptive, highly perceptive actually. They tend to be honest, creative, and they're confident. Even when things look really insurmountable for most of us, these people, the 5510s, will still retain their optimism. They've got an independence of thought, and their mind is their strength. They're able to make decisions by emotionally detaching, and this is to ensure that um, any decisions they make are objective, fair, and just. All right, and of course, this is when they're living upright, when they're living positively. They understand that there is power in words and speech, and because of this understanding, they're very suitable for any roles that involve communication, and this includes vocations such as learning or teaching. They have an inherent thirst for knowledge, and they learn very quickly. And this helps them to have a really expanded perspective of the world and the people in it. Now, when it comes to verbal and written communication, they do so with flair, and they're very original. Obviously, in conveying their thoughts, because they're original thinkers anyway. It's this quest for knowledge and understanding that gives them the edge as far as insight goes, and they bring a level of inspiration to finding solutions to any problem that they come across in their day. Hope you're not hearing the cars go past. What else? They would be well advised to maintain a balance in their life and to never compromise their principles. And this is because if they compromise their principles, they're at risk of creating internal disharmony, and that will throw them off with their communication abilities. Meditation would be beneficial to them, as it will help them to direct their energy into constructive and positive pursuits. The 5510 is particularly cautioned against impulsiveness and aggressive behaviour. Some people refer to the 5510 as being a master number. However, I'm not one of them, to be clear. Master numbers come with a certain level of power attached to them, and the 5510 is not a power number per se, although it does carry a vibration whereby these people can access their psychic and intuitive gifts with a far greater ease than many of the other number combinations. The other thing with this particular number combination, it's associated with the Ace of Swords. Now, if anybody knows anything about the Ace of Swords, that, well, in fact, swords in general in the tarot, they represent thoughts and ideas, that the power of the mind, which of course is related to anything here that we're talking about today. What I consider to be both a blessing and the alternative, because my mind is fried after repeating this card 3 times, is that being decisive is a good thing when you know that you're coming from a space of good and your expanded vision. If the judgment is impaired because we're not seeing clearly or we're not working at our highest ebb, then there is room for remorse and self-recrimination if we act with haste. And this is the same for the people with the 5510. They do tend to be quite decisive and finalising, slamming doors, for want of a better word, on relationships that there is a disagreement with. What I mean by this is they're not particularly tolerant towards people that are time wasters, who do not fulfill the shared vision, if you like. And when the person is living upright, if the 5510 is living in their upright and aligned with their humanitarian purpose and living by high moral principles of fairness and justice, they're not going to feel guilty when they make that decision to bring the sword down and terminate a relationship. It's kind of like, okay, if things end when we're living by a higher purpose, if you like, we can just let go. And it's just a case of, well, actually, we're on a different page. You've got a different moral and ethical compass to me, so I'll see you in the next life or whatever. But there's no beating yourself up. Now, if the 5510 is living negatively, their judgment's clouded by emotion and that kind of stuff, they might slam the doors and then spend the rest of their life feeling recrimination and remorse and guilt and questioning their own judgment at the time. And there may be no, I'm trying to think of the word, these relationships may not be able to be built later on the track. So there is a caution here for the 5510 to not act in haste, to make sure that when they do bring that sword down, when they do decide to terminate relationships, that they have reflected on it and that they're not coming from a space of emotional reactivity or impulsiveness, that they're doing it because it's genuinely a case of, okay, different walks, different folks, and move on from it. So the 6410s, they tend to be very popular because they're really good conversationalists. They're very sociable and they're courteous. They've got, once again, the mental agility and acuity that is part of the ruling 10s. They tend to be, the 6410 specifically tends to be a nonconformist, and nobody could ever accuse them of being a sheep or a follower because they tend to be at the front leading the mob. They have a tendency to do very well financially and materially, not because they are on this personal quest to gain money because they like the idea of money or they're enamored by material possession, but rather because they understand that material success provides a freedom from physical deprivation and poverty. Now, we all know that if you're broke, in fact, all of us that work in energy know that money is not the be all and end all. Money does not buy happiness per se. It doesn't provide emotional support or whatever, but money definitely provides a level of freedom. If you've got no money, you can't afford to do X, Y, and Z, and a lot of those things that are associated with rest and restorations, shall we say. If you've got no money, you can't go on a holiday, you can't book into a retreat, you can't self-care. You might be eating loads of bread to fill you up instead of buying healthy fruit and vegetables, for example. So this is what we're talking about, is money and materialism does provide a freedom from deprivation, and the 6410 knows this, and therefore material success is important to them. Now, they are able to do this because they've got this superior learning ability. They learn very quickly and they learn with ease. And when they combine these qualities with inspiring or inspired actions, they're able to be really innovative around the solution finding that they make. And this is one of the reasons why they're so successful. They are not the sort of people that you would turn around and say, or who would rather turn around and say to you, well, it can't be done. They would be the sort of people who go, well, tell me the problem. Okay. And they will be able to look at the situation objectively and through a new lens, if you like, and find solutions that nobody else has come over. In fact, I have thought again and again, but when I do the other numerology charts, I've wondered if Elon Musk was a number 10, but he's actually not. So I find that quite interesting because he's very innovative with his approaches. And he carries the qualities of transformation. It might be worth actually doing a numerology chart on him. Anyway, back to the 6410s. They have a very open mind, which is part of their strength, if you like. They don't rule anything out. They would, if you said to them, well, I was wondering if this was going to be a good idea, they'd go, let's look at it. You know what I mean? They wouldn't rule it out as a knee jerk. They tend to be very realistic and practical in the way they look at a problem because they don't like to delude themselves. And it's because they have this approach that they're able to have this expansive vision or see this bigger picture and be able to predict to a level what might happen if they take this course of action. Now, all of this lends itself to the capacity to be able to rise above problems and to transform themselves. And repeatedly, they do know and they believe that the mind is a powerhouse of energy and that we should direct it to more than one venture, because anything is possible if we can concentrate and focus that attention, and that we should use meditation and discernment as part of illuminating problems. People with a 6410, they're always encouraged to maintain this positive and healthy attitude about themselves and their individuality, believe in themselves because of these wonderful gifts that they bring. They understand that if they can know themselves, their blessings, their gifts, their limitations, then that bodes well for the quality of their life. And equally, they know that if you have a group, because if we're talking about group consciousness, that it's really important that each member of the group, so this is focus on individuality, remember, each member of a group is an individual, and it's important that each individual know their own strengths and limitations as well, so that collectively they can rise above the problems. Now, the association of the 6410 with the Ten of Swords is probably quite, as an explanation, it is the card of transformation. This particular image doesn't do it justice. I've tried it with AI and it just, because I'm concerned about copyright, and the images that came up were just completely grotesque. But anyway, with the Ten of Swords, it's a man lying face down on the ground with 10 swords in his back. And it's associated with a level of betrayal. And some people, if they've been betrayed, will struggle to rise above that. When betrayal is cut to the core. So for a life path, the 6410, the way I interpret this is they will experience some really kick-ass, kick-butt life lessons. They will inevitably experience betrayal. That is part of life as well. But these people are incredible. The 6410 is incredible. They have the capacity, because of who and what they are, to look at any situation, including those kick-ass ones, to find the blessing within it and go, okay, you know what? Perhaps if it's a work situation, I got stabbed in the back at work, I lost my job and ended up, they tried to break me. But you know what? Now that I'm out of it, I've worked out that actually that was a blessing in disguise. It was the best thing they ever did to me, because I now have this job that I can do X and Y. So this is an amazing gift that these people bring to themselves. And we're talking about adaptability and flexibility, which is inherent to the 10's life path as well. But this is how these people do it. Nothing keeps them down, and they will continue to evolve and grow. And with each rebirth, they grow stronger and stronger. And remember, they are the teachers as well. When we're talking about 10s and how they manage their life, they're going to show us through their lived example just how to combat changing circumstances and rise above it. And the 6410 is obviously a really good example. So this is the last slide before we do the recap. So the last number combination for the ruling number 10 is 7310. Now these people are charming and creative. They're very patient. They have the ability and determination to recover from any of the setbacks that life might offer them. They're not the type of person to give up easily, because they are idealists and they will fight back, especially if they sense an injustice as having occurred. They value honesty and integrity. However, there's always the downside. For these people, they must learn to temper their sense of justice with realism and compassion, because they are very idealistic. It is only through the development of their conscious and spiritual awareness and this business of constructive cooperation with others that they will be able to attain these great accomplishments for themselves and for the greater good of humanity, if they can temper the justice with the compassion and to be realistic in their approaches. In many ways, they are the magicians of the world. They can actually create miracles for people. You're most likely to find them as philanthropists, potentially even creating benevolent funds, because they're so good at creating money and manifestation. And when we're talking about manifesting money, there is this reminder that's carried with it that there needs to be a balanced perspective over their material resources, because the spin side is, okay, they might be creating these miracles, manifesting money, and then there is the risk that they can be hoarding it. Well, they need to be encouraged to make sure that the balance includes this giving and receiving, and that this accumulation of wealth must have that natural flow, or accommodate the natural flow of financial energy. I'm just trying to think how to convey this. Okay, If you want to make money, you've got to spend money sometimes, but you've got to be wise with how you spend it. To make sure that your money grows for you. Now, these people, the 7310s, have capacity to do this. They will attain their wisdom, balance, and harmony and peace through accessing the higher consciousness, the inner light that falls within. And if they fail to access this consciousness, this is so important for them because it's related to material as well. If they put their focus purely on making money without the giving of it, then they will experience physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual deprivation. They have to have that balance there. Basically, unless they align their gifts with their true purpose, they're going to end up feeling completely unfulfilled. Money doesn't compensate for everything. So in summary, as you can see, there's a number of variations to the ruling number 10. But they all include leadership. And I should have stated for the last couple of slides, I forgot to, that every single gift that a ruling number 1 has is a gift there so that not only does it benefit them, but it enables them to be a good leader and to lead others based on their experiences and their gifts, and to help other people to overcome changing and uncertain times through being that walking and living example of adaptation and flexibility. Right, so you might, where I'm interested now is you might know somebody with these numerology combinations, and I'd be really interested to hear what you think about the content that I've put up and how relatable it is to you, especially in the context of somebody that you know. Now, on the other hand, it might be you that's got this number combination, and I'd be very interested in hearing from you what you think is relatable content, what might be accurate or what might be inaccurate. Now, if you notice variations, then the questions with that would be, well, why is it varied? Are these people actually not living their path at the moment? Are they living it negatively? Are they unawakened? Because we're all formed and shaped by our life experiences as well. Perhaps there's been impacts in the environment or whatever that have affected or intruded upon them being able to access these gifts. Leave a comment. If it's you, if you're the one with the ruling number and you're like, that's not true, I'm a 2810 and I don't have these attributes, blah, blah, blah. Do you or don't you? That would be the question. How we see ourselves is not necessarily how others see us, because we're all looking at ourselves through a one-sided window until we learn to develop that awareness and step outside of ourselves and try to view ourselves through that perspective of how others might see us. Either way, I'm very interested to hear your comments and your feedback. So right now, I'm going to disappear. I'm going to head off and do some other things. I thank you for being with me on this journey today, and I wish you the best. Enjoy your day. I shall catch you on the next video. Light and love. Bye.